A lot of coding agents do not fail because the model is weak. They fail because the context is weak. If the agent cannot reliably reach the right API docs, examples, and tool instructions at the moment it needs them, the whole workflow starts drifting. That is why this Gemini docs MCP push matters more than it first sounds. The practical bottleneck is often not intelligence in the abstract, but whether the agent can ground itself in the right reference material before it starts taking action. First, what changed? What changed is the shape of the context layer. Instead of treating documentation like a page a human reads and summarizes, this approach turns docs into something agents can query directly inside the workflow. Agent skills add another layer by packaging repeatable instructions and domain-specific patterns, which means less reinvention on every task and fewer brittle prompt chains. In other words, the context stops being passive reading material and starts acting like part of the execution environment. This matters because the expensive part of coding agents is not just token cost, it is rework. When an agent calls the wrong method, follows stale examples, or improvises around missing context, a developer still has to unwind the mess. Better docs access and reusable skills can reduce those failure loops and make agent output more reviewable, especially on real product work instead of toy demos. That is where the economic case starts to become real. Less cleanup, fewer retries, and more predictable handoff back to the human developer. Now the evidence. The limit is that better context is not the same thing as autonomy. If the docs are incomplete, the skill is outdated, or the repository has local rules the agent cannot see, you still get confident mistakes. Structured docs make the system cleaner, but they do not remove the need for testing, human review, and good repository defaults. They mainly improve the odds that the agent starts from the right map. That is a meaningful upgrade, but it is still an upgrade to workflow reliability, not a substitute for engineering judgment. So what should creators do with that? The best use case is not a magical general programmer. It is a team that does the same classes of work repeatedly inside a known toolchain with enough structure to define what good looks like. That is where MCP-accessible docs and agent skills become real leverage. Fewer hallucinated calls, faster first drafts, and less time explaining the same local conventions over and over again. The more repeatable the environment is, the more these context layers compound. The real signal is not whether one demo looks smoother. It is whether agents start using the right docs earlier, need fewer correction loops, and become easier to review on repeated engineering tasks. If that happens, this layer matters. If it does not, the announcement stays mostly cosmetic. The most convincing proof will be boring operational evidence, not one polished launch video. The bottom line is simple. Better context beats vague autonomy claims. Agent skills help when the defaults are strong, and testing still decides whether coding agents are actually usable in production. That is a version of the story worth paying attention to. If the docs, skills, and local rules stay in sync, the agent gets meaningfully better. If they drift, the whole promise weakens again.